Elena Hart thought the worst part of her night would be the empty cash register and the rain-soaked walk home. She was wrong. At 5 months pregnant, abandoned by everyone who ever promised to care, she found herself bleeding onto cold pavement with nowhere to turn, until a black luxury car pulled up beside her, and a man with eyes like winter made her an offer she couldn't afford to refuse. What she didn't know was that accepting his help would drag her into a war she never signed up for, between men who saw her unborn child as nothing more than collateral damage. If you're hooked, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. As the rain came down like punishment, Elena Hart stood under the broken awning of Rosie's diner, watching the street flood with dirty water and knowing she had exactly 2 choices: walk 4 miles in this storm or sleep on the bathroom floor again. Neither sounded survivable, but survival had stopped being a guarantee the day Marcus walked out. Her hand moved to her belly without thinking. 5 months along. The bump was obvious now, even under the oversized coat she'd stolen from the lost and found box. Her feet were swollen inside shoes held together with duct tape, and her lower back felt like someone had taken a hammer to her spine during the double shift she'd just finished. 16 hours. Tips totaling $11.37. She'd already spent $9 on prenatal vitamins at the gas station pharmacy, which meant she had $2 and change to make it through the next 3 days before her next shift. The math didn't work. It never worked anymore. "Elena, you still here?" Rosie's voice came from inside, rough with decades of cigarettes. "I'm locking up. Just waiting for the rain to let up." "It's not going to let up. Weather said all night." Rosie appeared in the doorway, keys jangling. She looked at Elena with something between pity and irritation. "You need a ride?" "No, I'm good. Someone's picking me up." The lie came smooth because she'd practiced it. Rosie didn't believe her. Elena could see it in the older woman's face, but Rosie also didn't care enough to push. That was the thing about being invisible. People let you disappear without a fight. Suit yourself. Rosie locked the door, hurried to her car without looking back, and drove off, leaving Elena alone with the rain and the fluorescent light from the closed diner reflecting off the wet pavement. Elena waited until Rosie's taillights disappeared, then stepped out from under the awning. The rain hit her immediately, cold and mean. She pulled her coat tighter and started walking. The first mile wasn't terrible. She'd done this before. You just kept moving, kept your head down, ignored the cars that slowed next to you before speeding up again. The second mile was when her feet started screaming, blisters she'd been nursing for days splitting open fresh. The third mile was when the cramping started, not contractions. She knew what those felt like from the scare she'd had 2 weeks ago in the hospital, the one that had cost her $300 she didn't have, and a stern lecture from a doctor who clearly thought she was too young, too poor, too stupid to be carrying a child. But this was close enough to scare her. She stopped under a shuttered bus stop, leaning against the graffitied plexiglass, trying to breathe through it. The baby kicked, restless. She pressed her palm flat against the movement, willing everything to just hold together a little longer. "Just a little longer," she whispered. "Please." The cramping eased. She waited another minute, then forced herself to keep walking. She didn't see the car until it was right beside her. Black. Expensive. The kind of vehicle that didn't belong in this neighborhood, where the pawn shops had bars on the windows and the convenience stores kept their registers behind bulletproof glass. It rolled alongside her slowly, matching her pace, the engine purring so quietly she barely heard it over the rain. Every instinct Elena had learned growing up in places like this screamed at her to run. But she was so tired. So goddamn tired. The passenger window rolled down. She kept walking, eyes forward, but she couldn't help glancing over. The man driving looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. Dark hair slicked back, sharp jawline, a suit that probably cost more than she'd made in the last 6 months. He was maybe 35, maybe older, hard to tell. His eyes were what stopped her. Pale, cold, focused on her like she was a problem he was calculating how to solve. "You're going to collapse before you make it another block," he said. His voice was low, controlled. No accent she could place, but expensive. Everything about him was expensive. "I'm fine." She kept walking. The car kept pace. "You're 5 months pregnant, it's 40 degrees and raining, and you've been on your feet for 16 hours. You're not fine." That stopped her. She turned to look at him fully, rain streaming down her face. How do you know to— Get in the car. I don't know you. I know. Something flickered in those cold eyes, but she couldn't read it. Get in anyway. Are you out of your mind? Frequently, he leaned across the passenger seat, pushing the door open. But right now, I'm the only option you have that doesn't end with you bleeding out in an emergency room or freezing to death in the street. So get in the car, Elena. Her name in his mouth made her stomach drop. How do you know my name? He didn't answer, just waited. She should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except what she did next. Elena got in the car. The door closed with a solid, final sound. The interior was warm, leather seats that felt like a goddamn miracle against her frozen skin. She started shaking immediately, the adrenaline and cold and fear all catching up at once. He didn't say anything, just drove. She wanted to ask where they were going, who he was, how he knew her name, but her teeth were chattering too hard to form words. And exhaustion was hitting her like a physical weight now that she was sitting down, now that she was warm. Her eyes closed without permission. The last thing she remembered was the baby kicking again, and thinking that maybe, just maybe, she'd made the worst decision of her life. When Elena woke up, she knew immediately that something was wrong. The bed was too soft, the sheets were too clean, the room was too quiet. She opened her eyes and stared at a ceiling that was easily 12 feet high, crown molding, recessed lighting that glowed soft and warm. The walls were some shade between gray and white that rich people probably had a special name for. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the city spread out below her like a carpet of lights. She was on the 15th floor, maybe higher. Elena sat up slowly, her body aching in new and creative ways. She was still dressed in her diner uniform, the stained black pants and wrinkled white shirt, but someone had taken off her shoes. Her coat was draped over a chair that looked like it belonged in a museum. The panic set in gradually, then all at once. She threw off the covers and stood too fast, the room tilting. She grabbed the bedpost, waiting for her vision to clear, then moved toward the door. It wasn't locked. That surprised her. She opened it carefully, expecting, what? Guards? Chains? What she found was a hallway that looked like it had been torn from an architectural magazine. Hardwood floors, abstract art on the walls, another massive window at the far end. She could hear sounds coming from somewhere to her left, low voices, maybe a television. She followed the sound. The hallway opened into a living space that was bigger than any apartment she'd ever lived in. Open concept, all clean lines and expensive minimalism. The kitchen had marble countertops. The furniture looked like it had never been sat on. And standing at the window with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear, was the man from the car. I don't care what Cortez thinks he's owed, he was saying, voice flat and cold. He had his chance to negotiate. Now he gets to deal with the consequences. He paused, listening. Elena stayed frozen in the doorway, trying to decide if she should run or wait. Find her, he continued. I want Sienna Hart found within the next 48 hours, and I want her brought to me intact. No excuses. He ended the call without saying goodbye, pocketing the phone before turning around. He saw her immediately. No surprise in his expression, like he'd known she was there the whole time. You're awake, he said. Where am I? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Somewhere safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need right now. He moved toward the kitchen, and Elena tensed, but he just went to the coffee maker, pressing buttons with the casual efficiency of someone who did this every morning. How do you feel? Confused, scared, possibly kidnapped. She crossed her arms. Take your pick. Kidnapped would imply you're here against your will. You're not. The door isn't locked. The elevator requires a key card, but if you really want to leave, I'll call you a car. Then I want to leave. Where will you go? He poured coffee into a white mug, the question clinical, like he was genuinely curious. Back to the efficiency apartment with the broken heater and the mold problem. The place your landlord's threatening to evict you from because you're 2 months behind on rent? Elena's hands clenched into fists. You have no right. I'm not judging you. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that wasn't cold calculation. Exhaustion, maybe. Or recognition. I'm stating facts. You have nowhere to go, no money, no support system, and you're growing a human being on approximately 900 calories a day. So before you storm out of here on principle, ask yourself if your pride is worth more than your child's survival. The words hit like a slap. She wanted to throw something at him, wanted to scream that he didn't know her, didn't know what she'd survived already. But she couldn't because he was right, and they both knew it. "Who are you?" she asked instead. Damien Cross. The name meant nothing to her. He seemed to expect that. "And what do you want with me? Right now? I want you to eat something." He gestured toward the kitchen island where a plate of food had appeared without her noticing. Eggs, toast, fruit. "After that, we'll talk." "I'm not hungry." "You're always hungry. You're just used to ignoring it." He pulled out a bar stool, the gesture somehow a command. "Sit." She should have refused, should have demanded answers first. But the smell of the food was making her stomach cramp with a hunger she'd been pushing down for days, and the baby was kicking again, restless and insistent. Elena sat. She ate. Damien watched her from across the counter, drinking his coffee, saying nothing. The silence was worse than questions would have been. "My cousin," Elena said finally, between bites. "On the phone." "You said her name." "Sienna Hart. She's been missing for 3 weeks." "I know. I filed a police report. They said she probably just took off with some guy, that she'd turn up when she got bored or broke." Elena set down her fork, appetite suddenly gone. "What does she have to do with you?" "She stole something from me. Or more accurately, she helped someone else steal from me, and now I need to find her before that someone else does." "Sienna wouldn't what? Get involved with criminals? Make stupid decisions for the wrong man?" Damien set down his coffee, his expression hardening. "She's been working as a bartender at a club owned by Rafael Cortez for the last 4 months. Cortez is a mid-level trafficker with delusions of empire. Your cousin got close to him, close enough to access his office, close enough to copy files from his safe. Files that contained information about my operations." Elena stood up. "You're insane. Sienna wouldn't—" "She did. And now Cortez thinks I sent her, that she was working for me, which means he's coming after me, and anyone he thinks is connected to me." Damien's eyes were chips of ice. "That includes you." "I haven't talked to Sienna in months. I don't know anything about—" "It doesn't matter what you know. It matters what Cortez thinks you know." He moved around the counter, closing the distance between them. Elena backed up instinctively, but there was nowhere to go. "Your leverage, Elena, both to Cortez and to me. If Sienna cares about you even a little, she'll surface when she hears I have you." The room tilted again. "You're using me as bait. I'm keeping you alive." His voice softened, just slightly. "Cortez has people looking for Sienna. When they find her, they'll torture her for information, then kill her. But before that, they'll come after everyone she's ever cared about, just to send a message. You, specifically, because you're vulnerable and pregnant and easy to hurt." Elena's hand moved to her belly. "You don't know that." "Oh, I do. Because that's how men like Cortez operate." Damien stepped back, giving her space. "So here's the situation. You can stay here, where I can protect you, or you can leave and take your chances on the street. Either way, Cortez's people will find you eventually. The only question is whether you'll be behind bulletproof glass when they do." She wanted to call him a liar. Wanted to believe this was some kind of elaborate con, that he was the real threat, not some faceless criminal she'd never heard of. But the conviction in his voice, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he'd said, "I'm keeping you alive," like it was a burden he hadn't asked for, it all rang too true. "What do you want from me?" she asked quietly. "Stay. Answer questions about your cousin when I ask them. Help me understand who she might run to, where she might hide." He paused. "In exchange, you get a safe place to sleep, food, medical care for you and the baby. When this is over, you walk away with enough money to start somewhere new. And if I say no, then I call you that car, and you take your chances." He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. "Your choice." Elena looked around the penthouse, at the luxury that felt like a cage, at the windows that showed a city she'd never be able to afford. She thought about the apartment she'd left behind, the broken heater, and the mold, and the landlord who looked at her like she was garbage. She thought about the baby, growing despite everything, fighting to survive in a body that could barely keep itself fed. She thought about Sienna, stupid and reckless and probably dead already. "How long?" she asked. "Until I find her. A few days. Maybe a week. And you promise I walk away after? No strings?" "No strings." Something flickered across his face, too fast to read. "You have my word." His word. Like that meant anything coming from a man who kept people in bulletproof penthouses and talked about trafficking like it was a business transaction. But what choice did she have? "Okay," Elena said. "I'll stay." Damien nodded once, pocketing his phone. "Good. There's a bedroom down the hall, the second door on the left. It has an attached bathroom. Use whatever you need. I'll have clothes brought up for you this afternoon." "Where will you be?" "Working." He moved toward the hallway, then paused. "The security code for the elevator is 8274. Don't leave this floor without telling me first. And don't try to call anyone. Your phone was dead when I found you, and I'm not giving it back until this is finished." "You said I wasn't a prisoner." "You're not. But Cortez has resources I don't want pointed in your direction. The fewer connections you have to the outside world right now, the safer you are." He looked at her one more time, and Elena could have sworn she saw something almost like regret in his expression. "Get some rest. We'll talk more tonight." Then he was gone, disappearing down the hallway, leaving Elena alone in the vast, silent penthouse, with nothing but her fear and the baby's restless movements to keep her company. She stood there for a long time, staring at the windows, at the city below, wondering what kind of man saved someone just to use them, wondering if she just traded one kind of cage for another. The rest of the day passed in a strange, suspended reality. Elena explored the penthouse cautiously, waiting for someone to stop her. No one did. The place was empty except for her. No guards, no staff, no sign of Damien. Just room after room of expensive emptiness. She found the bedroom he'd mentioned. It was bigger than her old apartment, the bed some king-sized monstrosity covered in white sheets that looked like they'd never been slept in. The bathroom had heated floors and a shower with enough jets to qualify as a car wash. She stood under the hot water for 20 minutes, watching the grime and exhaustion circle the drain, trying not to cry. When she got out, there were clothes waiting on the bed. Nothing flashy. Soft pants with an elastic waist, oversized sweaters, comfortable underwear that actually fit. Whoever had brought them had known exactly what a pregnant woman would need. That scared her more than anything. She dressed and went back to the kitchen, finding the refrigerator stocked with food that looked like it came from a meal prep service. Pre-portioned containers with labels like grilled chicken and quinoa and roasted vegetables. She ate mechanically, feeding the baby more than herself. The sun set. The city lights came on. Elena sat on the couch, staring at nothing, trying to figure out how her life had become this. She must have fallen asleep because the next thing she knew, there were voices coming from the hallway. "Don't care what it takes. Find her." Damien's voice, cold and sharp. "We've checked every location she's been in the last 6 months. She's gone underground." Another man, older, with a gravelly quality that spoke of too many cigarettes. "Then dig deeper. Check her known associates again. Someone knows where she is." "What about the cousin?" Elena froze. "What about her?" Damien asked. "Does she know anything?" "Not yet. I'll talk to her tonight." "And if she doesn't cooperate?" There was a pause. Elena held her breath. "She will," Damien said finally. "She doesn't have a choice." Footsteps. The other man leaving, a door closing. Then Damien walked into the living room and found Elena sitting on the couch, very clearly awake, very clearly listening. He stopped. "How long have you been up?" "Long enough." She stood, her fear transforming into anger because anger was safer. "You're hunting my cousin like an animal." "I'm trying to save her life." "By threatening mine?" "I haven't threatened you." He moved to the bar cart near the window, pouring himself something amber from a crystal decanter. "But I will ask you questions and you will answer them." That was the deal. The deal was that I help you understand where she might go. Not that I... "Tell me about Rafael Cortez." He turned to face her, drink in hand. "What did Sienna say about him?" "I told you, I haven't talked to her in months." "Before that, when you did talk, what did she say?" Elena crossed her arms. "She said she was dating someone new, that he was older, had money, treated her well. She was happy." "Did she mention his name?" No, she kept it vague, said he was private, didn't like her talking about him. Did she seem scared?
No. The opposite. She was excited. Elena's voice cracked. She said she was finally getting out, that she was going to have the life she always wanted. Damien's expression darkened. She was an idiot. She was desperate, Elena shot back. Just like me. Just like everyone who ends up working in places like that club, serving men like... She stopped herself. Like me? He set down his drink. Finish the sentence. Forget it. No. You were going to say men like me. Men who buy people, who treat them like assets, who think money solves everything. He moved closer, and Elena forced herself not to back away. You're not wrong, but I'm not Rafael Cortez. I don't traffic drugs or people. I don't torture women for sport. What I do is legal, mostly, and what isn't legal is at least clean. That's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to give you context. He stopped just short of crowding her, his voice dropping. Cortez is building an empire on the backs of people who can't fight back. He moves product through routes that belong to other organizations, and he's been trying to muscle in on my territory for the last year. The files Sienna stole? They contain information about shipments, routes, contacts, information that could get dozens of people killed if it ends up in the wrong hands. Elena's stomach turned. And you think Sienna... I think she was played. I think Cortez used her to get those files, and when she realized what she'd done, she ran. But running doesn't solve anything. It just delays the inevitable. Then help her. If you're so different from him, help her instead of hunting her. I am helping her. Damien's jaw tightened. By finding her before he does. They stood there in the dim living room, the city lights casting strange shadows across the floor, and Elena felt the weight of everything she didn't understand pressing down on her. I can't help you, she said quietly. I don't know where she is. I don't know anything about her life anymore. We were close once, but that was years ago. Before... She stopped. Before what? Before everything fell apart. Elena turned away, staring at the windows. Before I got pregnant. Before Marcus left. Before I ended up working 16-hour shifts just to afford a place with a door that locks. Sienna and I used to be best friends. We grew up in the same broken neighborhood, survived the same broken families. But somewhere along the way, we stopped talking, stopped trusting each other. And now she's out there, maybe dying, and I can't do anything to stop it. She didn't realize she was crying until Damien pressed a handkerchief into her hand. She stared at it, actual cloth, monogrammed with initials she didn't recognize, and almost laughed at the absurdity. Keep it, he said. I don't want your pity. Good. I'm not offering any. But his voice had softened, just slightly. I'm offering you a chance to save her. If you remember anything, a name she mentioned, a place she talked about, anything that might give me a direction, tell me. That's all I'm asking. Elena wiped her eyes, hating that he was seeing her like this. And what happens when you find her? I get the files back. I neutralize Cortez. Sienna gets to disappear somewhere safe. You make it sound simple. It's not. He picked up his drink again, swirling the liquid. But it's the best option she has. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to poke holes in his logic, wanted to find some reason not to trust him. But exhaustion was dragging her down again, and the baby was kicking harder now, like it could sense her stress. I need to lie down, she said. Damien nodded. There's a monitor in your room. If you need anything during the night, press the button. Someone will respond. Someone? You? Maybe? Maybe not. He turned away, dismissing her. Get some rest. Elena walked back to the bedroom, feeling his eyes on her, until she turned the corner. She closed the door, leaned against it, and let herself slide to the floor. She was trapped, not by locked doors or chains, but by circumstances that had been tightening around her for years. Poverty, pregnancy, the kind of desperation that made you get into cars with strangers because the alternative was worse. And now Sienna was out there somewhere, tangled up in something that Elena couldn't begin to understand. She pressed both hands against her belly, feeling the baby move. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry you got stuck with me. The baby kicked once, hard, like a reprimand. Elena closed her eyes and tried to breathe. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow she'd figure out what to do. Tonight, she just needed to survive. The morning came too early,
pale light spilling through the floor-to-ceiling windows and dragging Elena out of dreams she couldn't remember. She lay there for a moment, disoriented, before the reality of where she was crashed back down. The penthouse. Damien Cross. Her cousin missing, tangled up with criminals Elena couldn't even picture. She pushed herself up, wincing at the stiffness in her back. The baby was already awake, rolling around like it was trying to find a more comfortable position. She pressed her hand against the movement, whispering, "I know. I'm sorry. We'll figure it out." The bedroom door was still closed. No sounds from the rest of the penthouse. She used the bathroom, splashed water on her face, and forced herself to look in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair a disaster. The borrowed clothes hung loose on her frame despite the pregnancy, making her look younger and more fragile than 26 had any right to be. She hated it. Hated looking like someone who needed saving. When she finally ventured out into the main living area, she found Damien already awake, seated at the dining table with a laptop open and what looked like architectural blueprints spread across the surface. He was wearing different clothes, dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and he looked like he'd been awake for hours. "There's breakfast in the kitchen," he said without looking up. "Help yourself." Elena moved toward the kitchen island, where another covered plate waited. Eggs again, this time with avocado and whole grain toast. A glass of orange juice. She wondered who was preparing this food, where they were doing it, how they got in and out without her noticing. She ate standing up, watching Damien work. He had the kind of focus that made everything else disappear. His eyes scanning documents, fingers typing rapid notes. There was a phone next to his laptop that kept lighting up with messages he ignored. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked. "When I can afford to." He finally looked up, his gaze moving over her in a way that felt clinical rather than personal. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm living in someone else's life." "You'll get used to it." "I don't want to get used to it." Elena set down her fork. "I want to go back to normal." "Normal is what got you bleeding on a street corner." He closed the laptop. "Normal is working yourself to death for $11 in tips. Normal is pretending you're not terrified every time you feel a cramp. So forgive me if I don't think normal is worth going back to." The words stung because they were true. She looked away, focusing on her orange juice. "There's a doctor coming this afternoon," Damien continued. "She'll do a full checkup, make sure everything's progressing the way it should." Elena's head snapped up. "I didn't agree to that." "You didn't have to. When's the last time you saw a doctor?" 2 weeks ago, at the ER. "And before that?" She didn't answer. "Right." He stood gathering the blueprints. "Dr. Shaw will be here at 2. She's discreet, experienced, and she won't ask questions you don't want to answer. All you have to do is let her examine you." "And if I refuse?" "Then you're an idiot who's putting her baby at risk out of spite." He moved toward the hallway, then stopped. "I have meetings most of the day. Marcus will be here if you need anything." "Who's Marcus?" "Security! He'll be outside the elevator." Damien looked back at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Don't try to leave without telling him first. If Cortez has people watching this building, and he probably does, I'd rather not have you walking out unprotected." "I thought you said I wasn't a prisoner." "You're not, but prisoners and protected persons sometimes look the same from the outside." He walked away before she could respond, disappearing down the hallway and leaving her alone with the breakfast she no longer wanted. Elena stood there in the pristine kitchen, surrounded by luxury that felt like a taunt, and tried not to think about how easily she'd given up her freedom for a warm bed and 3 meals a day. The hours dragged. Elena explored the penthouse more thoroughly, opening doors she'd been too scared to touch the day before. Most of the rooms were empty or obviously unused, guest bedrooms with bare mattresses, a home office that looked sterile and impersonal, a gym that had equipment she didn't know how to operate. There was a library that surprised her, floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books that actually looked read. She pulled one out at random, some dense thriller about financial crime, and found notes in the margins, written in a sharp, precise hand. She put it back quickly, feeling like she'd violated something private. Around noon, she heard voices from the hallway. Male voices, low and urgent. She moved closer to her bedroom door, listening. "Still no sign of her. We've checked every contact, every location. She's either dead or she's got help we don't know about." The gravelly voice from last night. "She's not dead." Damien's voice, flat with certainty. "Cortez would have made it public by now. He'd want me to know." "Then where is she?" That's what we're paying you to figure out. A pause. What about the cousin? Elena's breath caught. Quiet. Cooperative, doesn't seem to know anything useful. The gravelly voice again. You really think the girl's going to lead us anywhere? I think Sienna Hart loved exactly 3 people in her life. Her mother, who died when she was 12, a boyfriend named Tommy, who overdosed 5 years ago, and Elena. If she's desperate enough, she'll reach out. And if she doesn't, then we move to plan B. Which is? You don't need to know yet. Footsteps moving away. Keep the surveillance tight. I want eyes on every person Elena knew before this. Friends, coworkers, old landlords. Someone knows something. The voices faded. Elena stood frozen in her room, heart hammering. They were watching everyone she knew, everyone she'd ever talked to. The invasion of it, the casual violation, made her want to scream. Instead, she went to the window and stared out at the city, feeling more trapped than ever. Dr. Shaw arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. She was a small woman in her 50s with steel gray hair cut short and eyes that assessed Elena with the kind of detached professionalism that came from decades of seeing the worst humanity had to offer. Elena Hart? She set down a medical bag on the dining table. I'm Dr. Shaw. Mr. Cross asked me to check on you and the baby. I'm fine. I'll be the judge of that. The doctor pulled out a blood pressure cuff. Sit. There was something about her tone. Brisk, no nonsense, completely unbothered by the strangeness of doing a house call in a penthouse, that made Elena obey. She sat. Dr. Shaw wrapped the cuff around her arm and pumped it tight. When was your last prenatal visit? Dr. Shaw asked. 2 weeks ago. Emergency room. What happened? Cramping, spotting, they said it was stress, told me to rest and stay hydrated. And did you? Elena didn't answer. The doctor made a disapproving sound. Blood pressure's high. Not dangerous yet, but trending that way. She pulled out a stethoscope. Lift your shirt. Elena did, exposing the swell of her belly. Dr. Shaw's hands were cold and efficient, pressing, listening, measuring. The baby kicked against the pressure, and something that might have been a smile crossed the doctor's face. Active little thing. She pulled out a portable ultrasound machine, squirting gel on Elena's stomach. Let's get a look. The screen flickered to life, gray static that gradually resolved into shapes Elena had learned to recognize. Head, spine, the rapid flutter of a heartbeat. She'd seen this twice before in ER visits, but it never stopped feeling surreal. The proof that there was something alive inside her, something that had its own heartbeat and its own stubborn will to survive. 22 weeks, give or take, Dr. Shaw murmured, moving the wand. Growth looks good. Amniotic fluid levels are acceptable. No obvious abnormalities. She paused. Do you want to know the sex? Elena's throat tightened. No. Fair enough. The doctor cleaned off the wand and put it away. I'm going to draw some blood, check your iron levels, and blood sugar. When's the last time you ate a full meal before yesterday? I eat. That's not what I asked. Elena looked away. I don't know. A week? 2? Dr. Shaw's expression hardened. You're growing a human being on the nutritional equivalent of poverty rations. Your body is cannibalizing itself to keep that baby alive. Another month like that, and you'd be looking at preterm labor, possibly worse. I didn't have a choice. You do now. The doctor pulled out supplies for the blood draw, assembling them with practiced ease. Mr. Cross has arranged for meal delivery 3 times a day. High protein, high iron, all the calories you need. You will eat every meal. You will drink water. You will take the prenatal vitamins I'm leaving with you. And you will see me every week until this baby is born. Understood? You can't just, I can, and I am. Dr. Shaw tied the tourniquet around Elena's arm. Make a fist. Elena obeyed, watching as the needle slid into her vein with barely a pinch. Blood flowed into the vial, dark and thick. I'm not here to judge your circumstances, the doctor said quietly, filling the 3rd vial. I don't care how you ended up in this penthouse or what arrangement you have with Mr. Cross. What I care about is that baby. And right now, that baby needs you to survive, so you're going to let me help you. Clear? Elena's eyes stung. She nodded. Good. Dr. Shaw finished the draw, pressed a cotton ball to the puncture site. Hold that. Don't bend your arm. She cleaned up efficiently, packing away her supplies. Before she left, she pulled a card from her bag and pressed it into Elena's free hand. That's my cell number. If anything feels wrong, cramping, bleeding, decreased movement, you call me immediately, day or night. I don't care what Mr. Cross says about phone privileges. Your health and that baby's health come first. Got it?
Got it. Dr. Shaw studied her for a long moment. You're stronger than you look. Try to remember that. Then she was gone, leaving Elena alone with a Band-Aid on her arm and a business card clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Evening came. Elena ate the dinner that appeared, grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, brown rice, and tried not to think about how easily she was settling into captivity. The food was good, the bed was comfortable, the baby was safer here than it had been in weeks. Maybe that made her weak. Maybe that made her a coward. She was still sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, when Damien came back. He looked exhausted, his shirt rumpled, his jaw tight with stress. He went straight to the bar cart and poured himself a drink without saying hello. Rough day? Elena asked. You could say that. He downed half the glass, then turned to look at her. Dr. Shaw said you cooperated. Did I have a choice? There's always a choice. You just don't like the alternatives. He moved to the window, staring out at the city. She said your blood pressure is high. She told you that? She tells me everything. That's what I pay her for. Elena's hands clenched. That's a violation of nothing. You're not her patient. You're someone I'm paying her to monitor. He glanced back at her. Don't worry. I'm not interested in your medical details beyond making sure you don't die on my watch. How reassuring. It should be. He finished the drink. Cortez made contact today. The room seemed to tilt. What? He called. One of those burner phones, untraceable. Said he knows I have you, and he wants to make a trade. A trade? Elena stood, her legs unsteady. For what? For the files Sienna stole. He's willing to let you go unharmed if I give him what he wants. The air left her lungs. So do it. Give him the files and let me go. I can't. Why not? Because I don't have them. Damien turned to face her fully. Sienna took the only copies. She either destroyed them or hid them somewhere I can't access, which means Cortez's offer is worthless. He's bluffing, trying to see if I'll panic. And will you? No. His expression was stone. But he will escalate. That's what men like him do when they don't get what they want. They escalate until someone breaks. Elena's hand moved to her belly. You said I was safe here. You are. This building has security that would make a federal courthouse jealous. Cortez can make threats all he wants, but he can't touch you as long as you stay inside these walls. He paused. The problem is Sienna. What about her? If Cortez can't get to you, he'll focus everything on finding her. And when he does, Damien's jaw tightened. It won't be quick. The casual way he said it, like he was describing a business transaction, made Elena's stomach turn. You're talking about her dying. I'm talking about reality. Cortez is not a forgiving man. Your cousin stole from him, made him look weak in front of his organization. He'll make an example of her. Then find her first. Elena moved closer, desperation making her bold. You said you have resources. Use them. Find her before he does. I'm trying. For the first time since she'd met him, Damien sounded almost human. Tired, frustrated. But she's gone to ground in a way that suggests either professional help or sheer dumb luck. Every lead turns cold, every contact dead ends. It's like she vanished. Maybe she did. Maybe she's already... Elena couldn't finish the sentence. She's not dead. I would know. He said it with such certainty that Elena almost believed him. But she's running out of time, and so are we. They stood there in the dim living room, the tension thick enough to choke on. Elena wanted to hate him, wanted to blame him for all of this, but the exhaustion in his voice, the tightness around his eyes, it made him seem less like a villain and more like someone drowning in the same water she was. Why do you care? She asked quietly. About Sienna, I mean. You said she stole from you. Why not just let Cortez have her and wash your hands of the whole thing? Damien was quiet for a long moment. Because I know what it's like to be used. To think you're building something real with someone, only to realize you were just a mark. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Elena saw something raw in his expression. Your cousin was an idiot to trust Cortez,
but she doesn't deserve to die for it. You have a conscience. How inconvenient. More than you know. He moved toward the hallway. Get some sleep. Tomorrow might be complicated. Wait. Elena took a step forward. What happens if you don't find her? If Cortez gets to her first? Damien stopped, his back to her. Then I do what I have to do to keep you alive, even if it means going to war. War? Elena's voice cracked. You're talking about people dying. People are already dying. They just haven't hit the ground yet. He looked back over his shoulder. Welcome to my world, Elena. Try not to let it swallow you whole. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the weight of everything she couldn't control. Elena didn't sleep. She lay in the expensive bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the baby move and thinking about Sienna. They'd been close once, before life got complicated. Before Sienna started chasing dangerous men and easy money. Before Elena got pregnant and learned what it meant to be truly alone. She remembered the last time they'd talked. 6 months ago, maybe 7. Sienna had shown up at the diner during Elena's shift, wearing a dress that cost more than Elena made in a month. Look at you, Sienna had said, spinning to show off. This is what happens when you stop settling for scraps. What happened to nursing school? Elena had asked. Nursing school is for people who want to work themselves to death for 40 grand a year. I found something better. Better how? Sienna had leaned in, her eyes bright with that manic energy she got when she thought she'd figured something out. I met someone. Someone real. He treats me right, Elena. He sees me. What's his name? Can't tell you yet. He's private. She touched Elena's arm. But when things settle down, I'll introduce you. You'll like him. Elena had wanted to argue, wanted to warn her, but Sienna was already pulling away, already halfway out the door. I'll call you, she'd said. She never did. And now she was missing, tangled up with criminals, and Elena was trapped in a penthouse playing bait in a game she didn't understand. The guilt was crushing. If she'd tried harder to stay in touch, if she'd been a better cousin, maybe Sienna wouldn't have felt the need to chase dangerous men for validation. Maybe she would have had someone to turn to when things went bad. But Elena hadn't been there. She'd been too busy drowning in her own problems, too focused on survival to notice someone else going under. The baby kicked hard like a reprimand. I know, Elena whispered. I know I screwed up. I screw everything up. Morning came with raised voices. Elena woke to the sound of shouting, Damien's voice, sharp and angry, and another man responding in rapid-fire bursts. She pulled on a sweater and stepped into the hallway cautiously. The confrontation was happening in the living room. Damien was facing a man Elena didn't recognize. Tall, built like he spent serious time in the gym, with close-cropped hair and a scar running down his left cheek. You said you could handle this quietly, the scarred man was saying. Instead, we've got Cortez making moves all over the city, our people getting pulled in for questioning, and a pregnant girl playing house in your penthouse. You're losing control. I don't remember asking for your opinion, Marcus. Damien's voice was ice. You don't have to ask. I'm giving it anyway. Marcus gestured toward the hallway, where Elena stood frozen. She's a liability. Get rid of her. No. She's not worth the exposure. Cortez knows you have her. Every day she stays here is another day he has leverage. I said no. Then you're letting sentiment cloud your judgment. Marcus stepped closer. The old you would have cut her loose the second she stopped being useful. What changed? Damien's expression didn't shift, but something in the air tightened. Careful. I'm serious. Since when do you play protector? Since when do you Enough. The single word dropped like a blade. Elena stays. Find another way to deal with Cortez. Marcus stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head. You're making a mistake. Then it's mine to make. Get out. Marcus left without another word, brushing past Elena in the hallway, without looking at her. The door slammed. Silence fell like a weight. Elena stepped into the living room. Damien was standing at the window, his shoulders tense, hands shoved in his pockets. He's right, she said quietly. I am a liability. Don't. He didn't turn around. Don't do his job for him. I'm serious. If keeping me here is putting you at risk, you think I can't handle risk? Now he looked at her, and there was something dangerous in his eyes. I've been handling risks since before you were old enough to vote. Don't insult me by pretending you understand the calculations I'm making.
Then help me understand. Elena moved closer. Why are you doing this? Why protect me when it would be easier to throw me to the wolves?
Because I'm not Rafael Cortez. The words came out harsh. Because there are lines I don't cross, and sacrificing pregnant women to save my own skin is one of them. That's it? A moral line? What else would it be? Elena studied him, the rigid posture, the clenched jaw, the way he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. I don't know. You tell me. For a moment, she thought he might. Thought he might actually say whatever was churning behind that carefully controlled expression. But instead, he turned back to the window. There's coffee in the kitchen. Breakfast will be here in 20 minutes. He pulled out his phone. I have calls to make. Dismissal, clear and absolute. Elena stood there for another beat, then turned and walked away. But as she reached the hallway, she heard him speak again, so quietly she almost missed it. I had a sister once. She was pregnant when she died. 24 years old. Elena stopped, her heart hammering. The man who got her pregnant promised to take care of her. Instead, he used her as collateral in a deal that went bad. When things fell apart, he cut her loose. She died alone, in a hospital, hemorrhaging because there was no one there who gave a damn. His voice was empty, scraped clean of emotion. So no, Elena, you're not just a moral line. You're a promise I made to someone who can't hear it anymore. Elena's throat closed. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. When she finally turned around, Damien was already on his phone, his expression back to that mask of cold control, like he hadn't just torn open a wound that clearly had never healed. Elena walked back to her room and closed the door, pressing both hands against her belly, feeling the baby move. I'm sorry, she whispered, not sure if she was talking to the baby or to Damien or to a dead woman she'd never met. I'm sorry you're all stuck with me. The baby kicked. Outside, the city hummed with life, indifferent to the small tragedies playing out in expensive penthouses high above the streets. And somewhere out there, Sienna was running, not knowing that every step she took was pulling Elena deeper into a war she'd never asked to fight. The days started bleeding together in a way that made Elena feel like she was losing track of time. Wednesday became Thursday, became Friday, each one marked only by Dr. Shaw's visits and the meals that appeared with mechanical regularity. She tried to keep herself occupied, reading books from Damien's library, doing prenatal yoga videos on the massive television, staring out the windows at a city she couldn't touch. But the isolation was getting to her, pressing in like the walls were slowly contracting. Damien was barely around. He left before she woke up and came back late, usually with that same exhausted tension in his shoulders. When they did cross paths, their conversations were brief and careful, both of them dancing around what he'd told her about his sister. Elena wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the man who'd become her jailer/protector, but something about the way he'd shut down after that moment told her the door was closed. On the 6th morning, she woke to voices again. This time they were quieter, more controlled, but there was an urgency underneath that made her skin prickle. She pulled on her robe and moved to the hallway, listening. Confirmed sighting in Ridgewood. One of our contacts saw her at a bodega 3 hours ago. Marcus's gravelly voice. She looked rough, lost weight, dyed her hair dark. Did she see him? Damien asked. No. She was gone before he could get close. But she left something behind. The clerk said she was asking about bus schedules to the coast. The coast? That's 5 different directions, Marcus. I know, but it's more than we had yesterday. There was a pause. Elena held her breath. Double the surveillance on coastal routes, Damien said finally. Bus stations, train stations, truck stops. I want eyes everywhere, and pull traffic cameras from Ridgewood. Maybe we'll get lucky with facial recognition. What about Cortez? His people are probably working the same angle. Let them. We move faster. Another pause. Anything from the cousin? Elena's stomach dropped. Still nothing. She keeps to herself, eats, sleeps, reads. Dr. Shaw says the baby's doing better now that she's getting proper nutrition. Marcus's tone shifted, becoming harder. But she's useless to us, Damien. Sienna hasn't reached out, hasn't tried to make contact. Whatever plan you had for using the girl as bait, it's not working. Plans change. So cut her loose. No. Flat. Final. Then what's the play here? You keeping her around out of the goodness of your heart? Because that's not like you, and it's making people nervous. People can be nervous. I don't care.
Footsteps, moving closer to the hallway. Is there anything else? Yeah. Cortez made another move last night. Hit one of our distribution points in the warehouse district.
Grabbed two of our guys, took product worth about $500,000. Silence. When Damien spoke again, his voice was so cold it made Elena shiver. Names. Rivera and Santos, both mid-level. They don't know enough to hurt us, but Cortez will hurt them anyway, just to send a message. Damien's voice was barely above a whisper now. Find them. I want them back alive if possible. If not, he stopped. Make sure their families are taken care of. Understood. The conversation ended. Elena heard Marcus leave, the elevator chiming as it descended. She should have moved, should have gone back to her room before Damien found her eavesdropping again. But she couldn't make her feet work. Couldn't stop thinking about those two men, Rivera and Santos, who were probably being tortured right now because of files Sienna had stolen. You can come out. Damien's voice, not unkind. I know you're there. Elena stepped into view, pulling her robe tighter. I didn't mean to... Yes, you did. It's your cousin we're talking about. I'd be listening too. He looked like hell, shirt wrinkled, tie loosened, stubble darkening his jaw. She was spotted. That's good news. Is it? She's still running. But she's alive, and now we know what direction she's headed. He moved to the kitchen, started making coffee with the same mechanical efficiency he applied to everything. The coast suggests she's trying to get out, maybe find a boat, disappear offshore for a while. Sienna doesn't know anything about boats. She doesn't have to. She just needs money and desperation, both of which she has in abundance. The coffee maker hissed and bubbled. The problem is Cortez's people are looking too. If they find her first, I know, you've made that very clear. Elena sat at the counter watching him. Those men, Rivera and Santos, will they die? Damien's hand stilled on the coffee mug. Probably. Because of this. Because of the files. Because of choices they made when they signed on to work for me. They knew the risks. He poured coffee, didn't offer her any. Don't romanticize this, Elena. The people who work in my world don't do it because they're victims. They do it because the money's good and they're willing to accept the consequences. That doesn't make it right. No. But it makes it reality. He took a long drink, grimacing like the coffee was too hot. You want me to feel guilty? Fine. I feel guilty. I feel guilty every time someone dies because of a decision I made. But guilt doesn't change anything. It just makes you slower. And in this business, slow gets you killed. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to call him out on the way he compartmentalized human life into calculations and acceptable losses. But she was also starting to understand that this wasn't sociopathy. It was survival. The same kind of survival she'd been practicing her whole life, just on a different scale. What happens when you find Sienna? She asked quietly. I get the files. I negotiate with Cortez. Everyone walks away damaged but breathing. And me? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Elena saw something complicated in his expression. You walk away too, with enough money to start somewhere new, somewhere safe. Just like that. Just like that. I don't believe you. Smart. He set down the coffee mug. But it's still true. I'm not interested in keeping you prisoner, Elena. Once this is over, you're free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. I'll set you up with enough cash to get an apartment, cover medical expenses through the delivery, and give you a cushion for the first year. After that, you're on your own. It sounded too good to be true. Like one of those deals that came with fine print you didn't see until it was too late. Why? Elena asked. Why would you do that? Because you didn't ask for this. Because your only crime was being related to someone stupid enough to steal from dangerous people. He picked up his coffee again. And because my sister didn't get that chance. Someone should. The mention of his sister hung in the air between them, heavy and unresolved. What was her name? Elena asked softly. Damien's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Claire. Her name was Claire. How did she... Elena stopped herself. I'm sorry, that's not my business. No, it's not. But he didn't walk away. Just stood there, staring into his coffee, like it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. She was 24. I was 30. I just started making real money, building something that could last.
I told her to stay away from my world to keep herself clean. She promised she would. He paused, and Elena didn't push.
She met him at a party. Some mid-level dealer who talked a good game. Made her feel special. Got her pregnant within 3 months. I didn't find out until she was too far along to... He stopped, swallowed hard. I told her I'd take care of everything. Set her up in a place, make sure she had what she needed. But she wanted to believe he'd do the right thing. Wanted to believe he loved her. And he didn't. No. He used her to get to me. Tried to leverage her pregnancy for a better deal on product. Threatened to hurt her if I didn't cooperate. I called his bluff. Told him I didn't negotiate with dead men. Damien's voice went hollow. He cut her loose. Dumped her at an emergency room and disappeared. She hemorrhaged during delivery. By the time I got there, she'd lost too much blood. The baby died too. A girl. Elena's eyes burned. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 10 years ago. I've made peace with it. But he hadn't. Elena could hear it in his voice, see it in the way his hands gripped the coffee mug like he was trying to crush it. He'd built a fortress around that pain, but it was still there, raw and bleeding underneath. Is that why you do this? She asked. Take on people like Cortez? To make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else? No. I do this because I'm good at it, and it pays well. He finally looked at her. But sometimes the work lines up with something that matters. This is one of those times. Before Elena could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the screen, and his expression hardened. What is it? Elena asked. Cortez just posted a video, sent it to every major player in the city. He tapped the screen, then turned it so she could see. The video quality was grainy, shot in what looked like a warehouse. 2 men were tied to chairs, bloodied and barely conscious. Even through the distortion, Elena could see the terror in their faces. A figure moved into frame, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a mask that covered everything but his eyes. This is what happens to people who disrespect me. The voice was distorted too, run through some kind of filter. Damien Cross thinks he can harbor traitors and protect thieves. He's wrong. These men are just the beginning. Find Sienna Hart, bring her to me. Or everyone connected to Cross pays the price. The video cut to black. Elena felt sick. Those are the men, Rivera and Santos. Yes, Damien's voice was empty. What are you going to do? What I have to. He pocketed the phone. Stay inside today. Don't go near the windows. Marcus is doubling security, but I want you in the interior rooms until I say otherwise. Why? What's happening? War. He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. Cortez just declared it publicly. Now I have to respond. Respond how? You don't want to know. He was already moving toward the elevator. Lock the bedroom door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marcus. Understand? Damien, understand? Harder now. Yes. He nodded once, then disappeared into the elevator. The doors closed with a whisper-quiet click, leaving Elena alone in the vast penthouse with her fear and the baby kicking restlessly inside her. She stood there for a long moment, processing everything she'd heard. Then she moved to the windows and looked out at the city below, at the tiny people going about their lives, completely unaware that somewhere in those streets, men were preparing to kill each other over stolen files and wounded pride. Elena pressed her hand to the glass, feeling the cold seep through her palm. Please be okay, she whispered, not sure if she was talking about Sienna or Damien or those 2 men in the video. Please just be okay. But prayer had never worked for her before. She didn't know why it would start now. The hours crawled by. Elena stayed in the interior rooms like Damien had ordered, pacing the hallway, trying to distract herself with books she couldn't focus on. The penthouse felt different now, not like a safe haven, but like a target. She kept imagining men with guns storming through the elevator, tearing through the rooms looking for her. Around noon, Marcus appeared. He didn't knock, just used a key card to access the penthouse and walked in like he owned the place. Elena met him in the hallway, her heart hammering. Is he okay? She asked. Define okay. Marcus moved to the windows, scanning the street below. He's alive, in one piece, currently engaged in negotiations that'll probably end in gunfire. You're not with him? He ordered me to stay here, protect the asset. Marcus glanced back at her, something like contempt in his eyes. That's you, in case you were wondering. I know what I am. Elena crossed her arms. You don't have to be an asshole about it.
Actually, I do, because someone needs to tell you the truth. Marcus moved closer, his voice dropping. Damien's losing focus. He's making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. And when people like him start doing that, they get sloppy. They get dead. He's trying to save my cousin. He's trying to save you. Sienna's just the excuse. Marcus studied her. You really don't see it, do you? See what? The way he looks at you. The way he's restructuring his entire operation to keep you safe. He's never done that before. Not for anyone, not even... Marcus stopped himself. Not even his sister. Elena finished quietly. Marcus's expression shifted, surprise breaking through the contempt. He told you about Claire? Yes. Then you know why this is dangerous, why you need to stay away from him emotionally. Marcus's voice went hard. Damien doesn't get attached. It's a rule he's lived by for 10 years. But something about you is breaking that rule, and when he finally snaps out of it, you're going to be collateral damage. So do yourself a favor and stop looking at him like he's your savior. He's not. He's just another monster with better PR. The words hit like a slap. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to defend Damien, but she couldn't, because part of her knew Marcus was right. She had been starting to see Damien as something more than a captor, had been letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, he actually cared. But that was stupid, naive, the kind of thinking that got people hurt. I'll keep my distance, she said quietly. Good. Marcus pulled out his phone, checking something. Stay in the bedroom until I come get you, and if you hear anything that sounds like trouble, get in the bathroom and lock the door. There's a panic button under the sink. You press it and help comes. Got it? Got it. Marcus left without another word, taking his contempt and his warnings with him. Elena stood in the hallway for a moment, then went to the bedroom and closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands pressed to her belly, trying to breathe through the anxiety that was threatening to swallow her whole. The baby kicked. Strong, insistent, like it was trying to remind her that she wasn't alone. I know, she whispered. I know you're here. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to keep us safe. The baby kicked again. Elena closed her eyes and tried to find the version of herself that had survived everything else life had thrown at her. The version that had walked 4 miles in the rain while pregnant. The version that had worked double shifts on 3 hours of sleep. The version that refused to break no matter how hard the world pushed. She was still in there. Elena just had to remember how to find her. Afternoon bled into evening. The sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like fire. Elena stayed in the bedroom, reading the same page of a book over and over, unable to concentrate. Her phone, the one Damien still wouldn't give back, would have been a comfort right now. Even just to scroll through old photos, remind herself that she'd had a life before all this. Around 8, she heard the elevator. Footsteps in the hallway, quick and purposeful. The bedroom door opened without a knock. Damien stood there, and Elena's breath caught. He was covered in blood. Not his, she could tell by the way he was moving, steady and controlled. But there was a lot of it, splattered across his white shirt, staining his hands. His face was a mask of exhausted fury. Are you hurt? Elena asked, standing. No. Then whose... Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. He moved past her to the bathroom, started washing his hands in the sink. The water ran red, then pink, then clear. Pack a bag. Light, only essentials. Elena's stomach dropped. Why? Because this building isn't safe anymore. Cortez knows where you are, and he's escalating faster than I anticipated. We're moving you tonight. Moving me where? Somewhere he can't find you. Damien dried his hands, his movements sharp with barely controlled tension. You have 10 minutes. Clothes, toiletries, nothing else. Go. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to demand explanations, but the look in his eyes, cold, focused, absolutely unwilling to negotiate, told her this wasn't the time. She grabbed the duffel bag from the closet and started throwing in clothes. Sweaters, pants, underwear, the prenatal vitamins Dr. Shaw had left. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely zip the bag. When she came back out, Damien had changed into clean clothes, all black, tactical looking. He had a gun holstered at his hip, barely concealed under his jacket. Elena's eyes fixed on it. Is that necessary? She asked. Yes. Have you... She couldn't finish the question. Used it tonight? No, but I would have if I'd needed to. He took the bag from her, slinging it over his shoulder. We're taking the service elevator down to the garage. Marcus is bringing a car around. You do exactly what I say when I say it. No questions, no hesitation. Clear? Clear? Good. He moved to the door, then stopped. If something happens, if we get separated or things go wrong, you remember that panic button Marcus told you about? Elena's throat tightened. Yes, every bathroom in this building has one. You find the nearest one and you press it. Someone will come. Understood? Understood. He nodded once, then led her out of the bedroom and down a hallway she'd never noticed before. A door opened onto a narrow service corridor, industrial and utilitarian. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as they moved toward another elevator. This one marked service personnel only. Damien swiped a card and the doors opened. They stepped inside. He pressed the button for the parking garage, and Elena watched the numbers count down, her heart in her throat. Where are we going? She asked quietly. Safe house about an hour outside the city. It's remote, defensible, completely off the grid. He didn't look at her. You'll stay there until this is finished. Alone? No, I'll have people watching you, and I'll visit when I can. When you can? Elena's voice cracked. So you're just stashing me somewhere and going back to fight this war? That's exactly what I'm doing. What if you don't come back? Now he looked at her, and Elena saw something flicker in his eyes. Then Marcus will make sure you and the baby are taken care of. I've already made arrangements. The elevator dinged, the doors opened onto the parking garage, dim and echoing. Elena could see a black SUV idling near the exit, Marcus behind the wheel. They moved quickly across the concrete. Damien opened the back door, helped her inside, then climbed in next to her. Marcus pulled out immediately, tires squealing slightly on the smooth floor. Any trouble? Damien asked. Clean. No tails, no surveillance that I could spot. Marcus navigated through the garage exit and onto the street. But Cortez has people everywhere. We could pick up a tail at any point, then lose it. Working on it. They drove in silence, Marcus taking a winding route through the city, doubling back, using alleys and side streets that Elena didn't recognize. She pressed her hand to the window, watching her city disappear behind them, wondering if she'd ever see it again. Are Rivera and Santos alive? She asked suddenly. Damien's jaw tightened. No. I'm sorry. Don't be. They knew the stakes. But his voice was hollow, and Elena could hear the lie underneath. He cared. He just couldn't afford to. They drove for what felt like hours, but was probably only 40 minutes. The city lights faded, replaced by dark highways and empty roads. Elena's eyes grew heavy, despite her fear, the movement of the car lulling her into exhausted half-sleep. She woke when the car stopped. They were in front of a house, small, isolated, surrounded by trees. No lights in the windows. No signs of life. Marcus killed the engine. Wait here, Damien said. He got out, gun drawn, and approached the house carefully. Elena watched him disappear inside, her heart racing. Minutes passed. Then lights came on inside, and Damien reappeared at the door, gesturing for them to come. Marcus opened Elena's door. Welcome to your new home. The house was sparse but functional. One bedroom, a small kitchen, a living area with furniture that looked like it had come from a discount store. But it was clean, and there were bars on the windows, and Elena could see cameras mounted at every corner. You'll be safe here, Damien said, setting down her bag. There's food in the pantry. A generator in case the power goes out. The security system is motion activated for 100 yards in every direction. Anyone approaches, you'll know. And if they get past the security? He pulled out a gun, smaller than the one at his hip, and set it on the kitchen counter. Safety's here. Point and shoot. It's loaded. Elena stared at the weapon, her stomach turning. I don't know how to use that. You'll figure it out if you need to. He moved to the door. I have to go back. Finish this. Damien, don't. He stopped, his back to her. Don't make this harder than it already is. I just want to know you'll be okay. I will be. I always am. But he didn't sound convinced. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marcus. If someone else shows up, use the gun and call the number programmed in the phone on the counter. Then he was gone, walking out into the night with Marcus. leaving Elena alone in the strange house with a loaded gun and more fear than she knew what to do with.
She locked the door like he'd told her, checked the windows, found the phone, and stared at it, at the single contact saved under emergency. Then she went to the bedroom, lay down on the unfamiliar bed, and pressed both hands to her belly. "It's going to be okay," she whispered to the baby. "It has to be okay." But outside, through the trees and the darkness, she could hear the wind picking up. And somewhere in the city they'd left behind, a war was about to reach its breaking point. Elena didn't sleep that first night in the safe house. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak and groan the old structure made. The wind rattled the windows. Tree branches scraped against the roof. Every sound made her imagine men with guns approaching through the darkness, coming to finish what Cortez had started. The gun Damien had left sat on the nightstand, gleaming dully in the moonlight filtering through the bars. Elena had never touched a firearm before. The closest she'd come was watching action movies where heroes made it look easy. Point, squeeze, problem solved. But she knew reality was different. Knew that if it came down to using that weapon, she'd probably hesitate, probably miss, probably get herself killed. The baby kicked, restless and uncomfortable. Elena pressed her hand to the movement, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "We're going to be okay. He's going to come back. This is all going to be over soon." But the words felt hollow even as she said them. Dawn came slowly, gray light creeping through the trees. Elena finally gave up on sleep and dragged herself to the kitchen. The pantry was stocked with basics: canned soup, crackers, pasta, things designed to last. She made herself eat a granola bar and forced down a glass of water, feeding the baby more than herself. The phone Damien had left sat on the counter, silent and accusing. She picked it up, stared at the single contact. Her thumb hovered over it, wanting to call, wanting to hear his voice and know he was still alive. But she didn't. Because what would she even say? Come back? Be safe? Don't die for someone you barely know? She set the phone down and moved to the window, staring out at the empty woods. The isolation pressed in, making her feel like the last person left in the world. Hours passed. Elena paced the small house, checked the security monitors Damien had showed her before leaving, watched the empty driveway for cars that never came. Lunch was more canned soup. Dinner was pasta with jarred sauce that tasted like cardboard. She ate mechanically, keeping the baby fed, keeping herself functional. Night fell again. Still no word. Elena sat on the couch, the gun now in her lap, because having it close felt safer than leaving it in the bedroom. The television had basic cable, but she couldn't focus on anything, just flip channels mindlessly, landing on news stations that showed nothing about warehouses burning or gang wars erupting. Whatever was happening in the city, it was happening quietly. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, headlights were sweeping across the living room window. Elena jerked awake, her heart slamming against her ribs. The security monitor showed a single vehicle approaching, a dark sedan moving slowly up the driveway. She grabbed the gun, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped it, and moved toward the hallway where she'd have a clear line of sight to the door. The car stopped. The engine cut off. A door opened and closed. Footsteps on the porch. Elena raised the gun, trying to remember what Damien had said. Safety off. Point. Squeeze. 3 knocks. A pause. Then a voice. "Elena, it's Marcus. Open the door." Relief flooded through her so fast she felt dizzy. She set the gun down on the hall table and moved to unlock the door, hands fumbling with the deadbolts. Marcus stood on the porch, looking even more exhausted than he had 2 days ago. There was a cut above his left eye, crusted with dried blood, and his knuckles were bruised purple. "Are you okay?" Elena asked. "I've been better." He walked in without waiting for an invitation, scanning the room like he expected to find intruders hiding in the corners. "You alone?" "Yes. What happened?" "Where's Damien?" "He's fine. Busy." Marcus moved to the kitchen, helped himself to water from the tap. "We found Sienna." Elena's world tilted. "What?" "Last night. Ridgewood bus station, exactly where we thought she'd run. She was trying to buy a ticket to Portland under a fake name." He drank half the glass in one go. "She didn't go quietly." "Is she hurt? Bruised? Pissed off?" "But alive." Marcus set down the glass. "Damien has her at a secure location. He's trying to get the files from her, figure out what the hell she did with them. And has she told him? Not yet. Your cousin's got a mouth on her and a stubborn streak that's going to get her killed if she's not careful. Marcus pulled out a chair, sat heavily. She keeps screaming that she didn't know what she was doing, that Cortez lied to her. Like that matters now. Elena moved to sit across from him, her legs unsteady. Does Cortez know you have her? Not yet. But he will soon. He's got eyes everywhere. Marcus rubbed his face. Which is why I'm here. Damien wants you moved again, somewhere even more remote. No. The word came out harder than Elena intended. I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding in progressively worse locations while everyone else fights this battle. If Damien has Sienna, if he has what Cortez wants, then end this. Make the trade or whatever needs to happen. But stop treating me like I'm made of glass. Marcus studied her, something like respect flickering in his eyes. You want to be involved? Fine. Cortez made contact 2 hours ago. He wants to meet. Neutral ground, just him and Damien, exchange the files for a guarantee that he backs off permanently. That sounds too easy. It is. It's a trap. Cortez has no intention of honoring any deal. He's going to try to kill Damien and take Sienna by force. Marcus leaned forward. But Damien's going anyway. Because he's an idiot who thinks he can outmaneuver everyone. Why are you telling me this? Because you might be the only person he'll actually listen to. Marcus's voice went rough. I've known Damien for 8 years. Watched him build an empire on ice-cold calculation and zero emotional attachment. He doesn't take unnecessary risks. He doesn't make decisions based on feelings. But ever since he pulled you off that street, he's been different, distracted, making choices that don't add up. Marcus, I'm not finished. He cut her off. He told me if something happens to him tonight, I'm supposed to make sure you and the baby are taken care of. Set you up with new identities, enough money to disappear, the whole witness protection package. He's got it all arranged. Elena's throat closed. He thinks he's going to die. He thinks there's a chance, which for Damien means it's practically a certainty. Marcus stood. So here's the deal. I'm taking you to him. You're going to talk some sense into that thick skull of his before he walks into a suicide mission. And if you can't do that, at least you'll get to say goodbye. Where is he? The warehouse district, about 40 minutes from here. Marcus pulled out his keys. We leave now. Elena pushed herself up from the chair, her mind racing. What about the safe house? What if someone comes here while we're gone? Then they find an empty house. Marcus was already heading for the door. Let's go. They drove through darkness, the headlights cutting tunnels through the night. Elena sat in the passenger seat this time, watching the trees blur past, trying to process everything Marcus had told her. Sienna was alive. Damien had her. But instead of feeling relief, all Elena felt was a growing sense of dread. Tell me about the meeting, she said. Where's it happening? Abandoned factory on the east side. Used to manufacture car parts before the company went under. Now it's just empty space and bad memories. Marcus navigated a turn too fast, the car's tires squealing. Cortez chose the location. Lots of entry points, lots of places to hide shooters. It's a kill box. And Damien agreed to this? He did, because he's convinced he can control the situation, turn Cortez's trap against him. Marcus's hands tightened on the wheel. Maybe he can. He's pulled off impossible things before, but I've got a bad feeling about this one. Elena looked at him. You care about him, Damien. He saved my life once, pulled me out of a situation that should have killed me, gave me a job when no one else would touch me. So yeah, I care. Which is why I'm trying to stop him from throwing his life away over guilt about his dead sister and some misplaced sense of responsibility toward you. The words stung, but Elena couldn't argue with them. You think I'm the problem. I think you're a complication he doesn't need right now, but that's not your fault. Marcus glanced at her. You didn't ask for any of this. Neither did he. Sometimes life just throws people together and calls it fate or coincidence or whatever. Doesn't make it any less of a mess. They drove in silence after that, the city lights growing brighter on the horizon. Elena pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the baby move. It was getting stronger, more active, like it knew something was about to change. If something happens tonight, she said quietly, if Damien doesn't make it, then you disappear. New name, new city, new life. That's what he wants. And you'll make sure that happens? I gave him my word. Marcus's voice softened slightly. Your kid will be taken care of, Elena. Whatever else happens, I'll make sure of that. It should have been comforting. Instead, it just made everything feel more real, more final. The warehouse district appeared like something out of a dystopian movie. Abandoned buildings, broken windows, graffiti covering every surface. Marcus navigated through the maze of structures until they reached a building that looked slightly less derelict than the others. Several vehicles were parked outside, including the black SUV Damien had been driving. Marcus parked a block away, killed the engine. Stay in the car. No. Elena opened her door. I'm coming with you. Elena, he needs to see me. Needs to know I'm okay. Maybe that'll change his mind about walking into that trap. She climbed out before Marcus could stop her. Besides, I've come this far. I'm not sitting in the car like a child. Marcus swore under his breath but didn't argue. He led her toward the building, moving carefully through the shadows. As they got closer, Elena could see guards, 3 of them, armed, positioned at different entry points. They recognized Marcus and let them pass without challenge. Inside the warehouse was exactly what Elena had expected. Concrete floors stained with oil and rust, metal supports rising to a ceiling lost in darkness, and in the center of the space, illuminated by harsh work lights, Damien stood talking with a woman Elena didn't recognize. No, not a stranger. Sienna. Her cousin looked like she'd aged 5 years in the last month. Her hair was chopped short and dyed an unnatural black. She'd lost weight, her face gaunt and hollow. But her eyes were the same, sharp, defiant, burning with the kind of anger that came from knowing you'd screwed up and refusing to admit it. Don't care what you think happened, Sienna was saying, her voice echoing in the empty space. I didn't know those files were yours. Cortez said they belonged to a rival, that he needed them for protection. And you believed him. Damien's voice was flat, exhausted. You believed a man who traffics drugs and people, who's killed more men than you've probably met, and you thought he was telling you the truth. I thought he loved me. Sienna's voice cracked. You thought wrong. Damien cut her off. Where are the files, Sienna? I don't have them anymore. What? I gave them to someone for safekeeping, someone Cortez would never think to look. Sienna crossed her arms. I'm not stupid. I knew he'd come after me eventually, so I made sure the files were somewhere safe. Who has them? I'm not telling you until you guarantee my safety. Real safety, not just hiding me in some warehouse and hoping Cortez doesn't find me. Damien took a step forward, and even from across the warehouse, Elena could see the fury in his movements. You don't get to make demands. You stole from me, put people's lives at risk, and started a war you can't possibly understand. The only reason you're still breathing is because your cousin asked me to find you. Elena? Sienna's head snapped up, her eyes scanning the darkness. She's here? No, Damien started to say, but Elena was already walking forward into the light. I'm here. Sienna's expression crumpled. Oh my God. Elena, don't. Elena stopped a few feet away, her hands clenched at her sides. Don't act like you're happy to see me. You disappeared without a word, got involved with a monster, and dragged me into a nightmare I never asked for. So don't stand there and pretend you care. I do care, Sienna wiped at her eyes. I made mistakes. I know that, but I was trying to get out, trying to build something better. By stealing files and playing spy? That's your idea of better? Elena's voice rose. People died because of you, Sienna. Good people who were just trying to do their jobs. And now Damien's about to walk into a trap because you won't tell him where you hid those files. He's not walking into a trap. He's going to negotiate. It's a trap. Marcus spoke up from behind Elena. Cortez is planning to kill him and take you by force. There's no negotiation happening. Sienna went pale. What? You heard me? Marcus moved to stand next to Damien. So either you tell us where those files are right now, or you're responsible for more deaths. Your choice. Sienna looked between them, her defiance crumbling. I gave them to Tommy's brother, Jake. He lives in Riverside, works at an auto shop. I paid him to keep a storage locker for me, told him it was just personal stuff. Jake Moreno? Damien pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. The one who did time for armed robbery? He's clean now, has been for 3 years. Sienna's voice was desperate. He won't give them up unless I ask him to. You need me alive for this to work. Damien stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Marcus. Get coordinates on that storage facility. I want a team there in 20 minutes. What about the meeting with Cortez? I'm still going. Damien pocketed his phone. But now I have leverage. If he wants those files, he'll have to guarantee safe passage for everyone involved, including Sienna. He'll never agree to that, Marcus said. He will if the alternative is me burning the files and making sure he never sees them. Damien's voice went cold. Cortez is smart enough to know when he's lost. And if he's not, then we do this the hard way. Damien finally looked at Elena, and she saw everything he wasn't saying in that glance. Fear, regret, something that might have been an apology. Take Elena and Sienna to the secondary location. Don't come back here until you hear from me. No. Elena stepped forward. I'm not leaving. Elena. I said no. She closed the distance between them. You don't get to send me away and then walk into a situation that'll probably kill you. If you're staying, I'm staying. This isn't your fight. It stopped being just your fight the second you pulled me into your car. Elena's voice shook but didn't break. You want me safe? Fine. Keep me safe by not dying tonight. Damien stared at her and Elena stared back, refusing to flinch. Around them, the warehouse was silent except for the distant hum of traffic. You're impossible, he said finally. I learned from the best. Something that might have been a smile flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that mask of cold control. Fine. But you stay with Marcus. You do what he says when he says it. And if things go wrong, you run. Understand? Understand. He nodded, then turned to Marcus. Get the team in position. I want eyes on every entrance, snipers on the roofs, and backup ready to move if this goes sideways. You're really doing this. I don't have a choice. Damien checked his watch. Cortez will be here in 30 minutes. That's how long we have to get ready. The next half hour was controlled chaos. Men appeared from the shadows, armed and professional, taking positions throughout the warehouse. Marcus directed them with military precision, turning the kill box into something that might actually be defensible. Elena watched from the corner with Sienna, who hadn't stopped shaking since Marcus explained what was about to happen. I'm sorry, Sienna whispered, for all of it, for dragging you into this. I know. Elena didn't look at her. But sorry doesn't fix anything. I thought I could handle him, Cortez. I thought I was smart enough to play the game. You weren't. No one is. Elena finally turned to face her cousin. You were desperate and lonely and looking for someone to make you feel special. He saw that and used it. That's not your fault. But everything that came after, the stealing, the running, the lying, that's on you. Sienna's face crumpled. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Start by staying alive. That's all anyone can ask right now. They fell silent, watching as the final preparations were made. Damien stood in the center of the space, utterly calm, checking his weapon and speaking quietly with Marcus. He looked like a man preparing for war, and Elena felt something twist in her chest. She'd started caring about him. Somewhere between the penthouse and the safe house and all the conversations in between, she'd let him become more than just her captor. He'd become someone who mattered, and now he might die. The realization hit her like a punch. She pushed herself up from the crate she'd been sitting on and walked over to him, ignoring Marcus's warning look. Damien, he looked up. You should be with Marcus. I need to say something first. Elena took a breath. If this goes wrong, if you don't make it, I need you to know that you're not doing this because of your sister. You're doing it because you're a better person than you think you are. His expression flickered. Elena, I'm not finished. Her voice steadied. You saved me when you didn't have to. You protected me when the smart thing would have been to throw me away. And you've been fighting this war not because you want to, but because it's the right thing to do. So don't walk out there thinking you're just paying off some debt to a ghost. You're worth more than that. Damien stared at her, and for a moment Elena thought he might actually say something real, something true. But then his mask slammed back into place. Get to the safe position. That's an order. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to make him acknowledge what she'd said, but Marcus was already there, guiding her back toward the shadows, and Damien was turning away, refocusing on the task ahead. 5 minutes later, headlights appeared at the entrance. Cortez had arrived. The car that pulled in was expensive, bulletproof, if Elena had to guess. 4 men got out first, spreading into defensive positions. Then the rear door opened and a man emerged. Rafael Cortez was younger than Elena had expected. Maybe 40, with slicked back hair and a suit that probably cost more than some people's cars. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no, his eyes scanning the warehouse with predatory awareness. "Cross," he called out. "You got my invitation." "Hard to refuse when you're threatening to kill everyone I know." Damien stepped forward, keeping his hands visible. "Let's make this quick. You want the files. I want guarantees." "Guarantees?" Cortez laughed. "You're not in a position to negotiate, my friend. You have something I want. I have the ability to end your entire operation with a phone call. Simple math, except I don't have the files. Not yet." Damien's voice was ice. "Sienna hid them, and the only way you get them is if we all walk away from this alive." Cortez's expression darkened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Your men tortured Rivera and Santos for information they didn't have. You've been chasing Sienna for weeks with no results. The files are hidden in a location only she knows, and she's smart enough not to give them up unless she's sure she'll survive." Damien took a step closer. "So here's the deal. You guarantee safe passage for everyone involved, me, my people, Sienna, and anyone connected to this mess. In exchange, the files get delivered to you intact. You get what you want, and we both walk away damaged but breathing." "Cian, and why would I agree to that when I could just kill you all and torture the location out of your cousin? Because I've got copies stored in 3 different locations with instructions to release them to your enemies if anything happens to me. The Italians, the Russians, every organization you've been trying to muscle out of the market. They'd love to know about your roots, your contacts, your vulnerabilities." Damien's smile was sharp as broken glass. "So yeah, you could kill me, but then you'd spend the rest of your very short life watching your empire burn." The warehouse was silent. Cortez's men shifted, hands moving toward weapons. Marcus tensed beside Elena, and she could feel the moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then Cortez laughed. Actually laughed, the sound echoing in the empty space. "You're good, Cross. I'll give you that." He adjusted his suit jacket. "But you're forgetting something important." "What's that?" "I don't make deals with dead men." The gunshot came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Elena screamed as Damien went down, blood blooming across his shoulder. The warehouse erupted into chaos, gunfire, shouting, Marcus dragging her and Sienna toward the back exit as bullets tore through the air around them. "Move!" Marcus was shouting, returning fire as he pushed them forward. "Go! Go! Go!" Elena ran, her hand pressed to her belly, terror making her clumsy. Sienna was beside her, crying, stumbling. Behind them, the firefight intensified, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like strobe lights. They burst through a side door into the night. Marcus shoved them toward a car Elena didn't recognize. "Get in! Now!" "What about Damien?" Elena gasped. "He's got backup. We need to move." Marcus practically threw them into the vehicle, then climbed into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. As they pulled away, Elena looked back at the warehouse. Flames were licking up one side of the building now, smoke pouring into the sky. She could still hear gunfire, could still see shadows moving in the orange light, and Damien was in there bleeding, possibly dying. "We have to go back," Elena said. "We can't just leave him." "He knew the risks." Marcus's voice was strained, "and he made me promise to get you out if things went wrong. So that's what I'm doing." "Marcus, I'm sorry, Elena. I really am. But this is what he wanted." They drove through the darkness, leaving the burning warehouse behind, and Elena felt something inside her break. She'd finally let herself care about someone. And now he was gone. The hospital parking lot was empty at 3 a.m. except for ambulances and a handful of cars belonging to night shift staff. Marcus pulled into a spot near the emergency entrance and killed the engine, his hands still gripping the wheel like he was afraid to let go. "Stay in the car," he said, his voice hoarse. "I need to check if it's safe." Elena didn't argue. She was too numb, too hollowed out by fear and exhaustion. Beside her, Sienna had stopped crying but was staring out the window with blank eyes, her face pale in the sodium lights. Marcus got out, scanned the lot, then returned a moment later. "It's clear, but we move fast. Cortez's people could be anywhere." He helped them out, one hand on his weapon, eyes constantly moving. They walked through the automatic doors into the harsh fluorescent brightness of the ER waiting room. A nurse looked up from her station, took one look at Elena's face, and immediately stood. "Are you hurt?" the nurse asked. Elena started, then felt it, a sharp cramp that doubled her over, stealing her breath. "Oh no! What's wrong?" Marcus grabbed her arm, keeping her upright. Another cramp, worse this time. Elena felt wetness between her legs and looked down to see blood staining her borrowed pants. The baby. Something's wrong with the baby. Everything moved fast after that. The nurse called for help. A doctor appeared. Someone brought a wheelchair. Elena was being rushed down a corridor, fluorescent lights streaking overhead, people shouting medical terms she didn't understand. 22 weeks, she heard someone say. Possible placental abruption. Get her to OB now. "I can't lose this baby." Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, I can't." "We're going to do everything we can," the doctor said. But Elena had heard those words before. They were the kind of promise people made when they couldn't guarantee anything. They wheeled her into a room that smelled like antiseptic and fear. Nurses descended, hooking her up to machines that beeped and hummed. Someone pressed an ultrasound wand to her belly, and Elena heard it, the rapid flutter of a heartbeat, still there, still fighting. "Baby's heart rate is elevated but stable," a nurse announced. "Contractions every 4 minutes. Start magnesium sulfate. We need to stop this labor." The doctor was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and hands that moved with absolute certainty. "Elena, I'm Dr. Morrison. You're having contractions and you're bleeding, which means your body is trying to deliver this baby way too early. We're going to give you medication to try to stop it. Do you understand?" Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Will it work? I hope so, but I need you to stay calm, stay still, and let us do our job." Dr. Morrison squeezed her hand briefly. "Your baby's a fighter. Now we need you to fight too." The medication went in through an IV, cold spreading up Elena's arm. The contractions didn't stop immediately. They kept coming, wave after wave of pain that made her want to scream. But gradually, slowly, they started to space out. 5 minutes, 7, 10. Hours passed in a blur. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, the medication making her foggy and disoriented. Nurses checked on her constantly. Dr. Morrison came and went, always with that same calm efficiency. And through it all, the baby's heartbeat kept playing on the monitor, a stubborn rhythm that refused to quit. When Elena finally surfaced fully, morning light was filtering through the window. Her body ached, her mouth was dry, but the contractions had stopped. She pressed her hand to her belly and felt movement, weak but there. "You're awake." Dr. Morrison stood beside the bed, reviewing a chart. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck. That's normal. You've been through hell." The doctor set down the chart. "The good news is we managed to stop the labor. The baby's stable, heart rate's good, and the bleeding has slowed significantly. You're not out of the woods yet, but you're in a much better place than you were 6 hours ago." Elena's throat tightened. "What caused it? The contractions?" "Severe stress. Physical and emotional trauma. Your body was already on the edge, and last night pushed you over." Dr. Morrison pulled up a chair. "I'm going to be honest with you, Elena. You can't keep living the way you have been. The baby needs stability, low stress, proper nutrition, and rest. If you have another episode like this, we might not be able to stop it. Do you understand what I'm saying?" "I understand." Elena wiped at her eyes. "But it's complicated. It always is." Dr. Morrison's expression softened. "There's a man outside, says his name is Marcus. He's been out there all night, refusing to leave. Should I let him in?" Elena nodded, too tired to do anything else. Marcus appeared a moment later, looking worse than Elena felt. His clothes were still stained with smoke and blood, his face drawn with exhaustion. But when he saw Elena awake, something in his expression cracked. "Jesus, kid, you scared the hell out of me." "I'm okay, the baby's okay." Elena's voice wavered. "Where's Sienna?" "Safe house, different one. She's got 2 guards on her and strict orders not to leave." Marcus moved closer, lowering his voice. "Elena, there's something you need to know." Her heart stopped. "Damien's dead." "No, he's alive." Marcus said it quickly, like he knew she needed to hear those words first. "He's in surgery right now. Took a bullet to the shoulder. Another grazed his ribs." Lost a lot of blood, but the doctors say he'll make it. The relief was so intense, Elena started crying again. Ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Marcus just stood there, letting her fall apart, not trying to fix it or make it better. "Where is he?" Elena finally managed. "2 floors up. ICU. He's been in surgery for 4 hours." Marcus glanced at Dr. Morrison. "Is she stable enough to move?" "Absolutely not. She's staying in this bed for at least another 24 hours, possibly longer." Dr. Morrison's tone left no room for argument. "Your friend will survive. Elena and her baby might not if she doesn't rest." Marcus nodded, accepting the verdict. He pulled up the chair Dr. Morrison had vacated and sat. "Then I'm staying here. Someone needs to watch your back." "What about Cortez?" Elena asked. "Dead." Marcus said it flatly. "Damien's team took out his guards. Cortez tried to run, got caught in the crossfire. It's over." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Marcus rubbed his face. "The files Sienna hid? We recovered them this morning. Damien's lawyer is already working on getting them to the right authorities. Cortez's operation is going to collapse from the inside now that he's gone, and everyone knows what's in those documents. His lieutenants are already turning on each other." Elena tried to process this. The war that had consumed the last 2 weeks of her life, the threat that had nearly killed her and her baby, was just over. It felt anticlimactic. Wrong, somehow. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we clean up the mess. Damien's people are securing all the loose ends. Your cousin is going into a protection program, new identity, the whole thing. She'll be fine." Marcus looked at Elena. "And you get your life back, or whatever version of it you want. What does that mean?" "It means Damien set up an account for you, $600,000. Enough to get an apartment, pay medical bills, support yourself and the kid for a few years while you figure things out." Marcus pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "Details are all here. The money's clean, untraceable. You can access it whenever you're ready." Elena stared at the paper like it might bite her. "That's too much. It's what he wanted. What he promised." Marcus set the paper on her bedside table. "Take it. Don't be stupid." "I need to see him. Damien, I need to—" "You need to rest." Dr. Morrison reappeared, having clearly been listening from the hallway. "Mr. Cross is in recovery and will be for several more hours. When he's stable and you're stable, I'll arrange for you to see him, but not before. Am I clear?" Elena wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. She nodded, sinking back into the pillows. Marcus stayed for another hour, mostly silent, just keeping watch. Eventually, a nurse brought Elena breakfast, bland hospital food that tasted like cardboard, but she forced herself to eat anyway. The baby needed it. The baby needed her to survive. Around noon, Dr. Morrison came back with an update. "Mr. Cross is out of surgery and in recovery. The procedures went well. Barring complications, he should make a full recovery." "Can I see him?" "Tomorrow. Maybe. If you're both stable." Dr. Morrison checked Elena's vitals. "Your blood pressure is still elevated, and I'm concerned about the risk of preeclampsia. We're going to monitor you closely for the next few days." "Days? I can't stay here for days." "You can and you will, unless you want to risk losing that baby." Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. "I know you've been through trauma. I know you're worried about other things. But right now, your only job is to rest and let your body heal. Everything else can wait." Elena closed her eyes, fighting tears. The doctor was right. She knew that. But it felt wrong to be lying in this bed while Damien was 2 floors up, recovering from wounds he'd gotten protecting her, while Sienna was hidden away in some safe house, while the world kept spinning without her. The afternoon dragged. Marcus left to handle things Damien couldn't, promising to come back that evening. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, asking questions, recording everything in charts. Elena tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind replaying the warehouse explosion over and over. The gunshot. Damien going down. The blood. She'd thought he was dead. For those terrible minutes in the car, fleeing through darkness, she'd been convinced she'd never see him again. That the last words between them would be orders and arguments, nothing real, nothing true. But he'd survived. They'd both survived. And now she had to figure out what that meant. Evening came. Marcus returned with takeout from a Chinese place that was actually decent, and they ate mostly in silence while the hospital hummed around them. Elena was picking at fried rice when Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway. "He's awake," she said, "and asking for you." Elena's heart jumped. Can I? 5 minutes, that's all I'm allowing. He needs rest, and so do you. Dr. Morrison gestured to a wheelchair. Hospital policy, no walking. Elena didn't argue. She let Marcus help her into the chair, and Dr. Morrison wheeled her down the corridor to the elevator. 2 floors up, through another maze of hallways, into the ICU. Damien's room was private, dim, filled with the same beeping monitors Elena had in her own room. He was propped up in bed, his shoulder heavily bandaged, an IV running into his arm. His face was pale, shadowed with exhaustion and pain, but his eyes were clear. When he saw Elena, something in his expression cracked. "You're okay," he said, his voice rough. "So are you." Elena wheeled herself closer, her hands shaking. "They said you might not make it. They always say that, keeps expectations low." He tried to smile, winced. "The baby?" "Stable. We both are. Dr. Morrison stopped the labor, but—" Elena's voice broke. "I thought you were dead, Damien. I thought I'd lost you." "I'm hard to kill. Ask Marcus." "I'm serious. So am I." He reached for her hand and Elena took it, feeling the warmth of his skin, the steady pulse in his wrist. Proof that he was alive, that they'd both made it through. What happened at the warehouse? Cortez was always going to try to kill me. I knew that going in. But I had to end it. Had to make sure you and the baby would be safe. By getting shot? By doing what was necessary. His grip tightened slightly. It worked. Cortez is dead. His operation is collapsing. The files are with the authorities. It's over, Elena. You're safe now. And Sienna? Protected. New identity, relocation, the whole program. She'll have a chance to start over. Damien's expression darkened. Whether she takes it or screws it up again is on her. Elena nodded, throat tight. Marcus told me about the money. The account. You earned it. You survived hell because of choices I made. He looked at her, and Elena saw everything he wasn't saying in those pale eyes. Take the money. Get an apartment. Finish your pregnancy somewhere safe. Give that kid a life worth living. What about you? What about me? Where do you fit in this plan? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Or do you just disappear now that the crisis is over? Damien was quiet for a long moment. I'm not good for you, Elena. You know that. I don't do relationships or family or any of the things you and that baby deserve. I'm a criminal who got lucky enough to build an empire on other people's weaknesses. That's not father material. That's not— Stop, Elena cut him off. Stop deciding what I need or what's good for me. I'm an adult. I get to make my own choices, even if they're stupid. Elena, you saved my life. You protected me when you didn't have to. You risked everything to end a war you didn't start, just to make sure my baby would be safe. So don't sit there and tell me you're not good enough. Don't insult me by pretending you don't care. I didn't say I don't care. Then what are you saying? Damien looked away, jaw tight. I'm saying I don't know how to do this. I've spent 10 years building walls around everything that matters because caring about people gets them killed. My sister died because I wasn't careful enough, because I let someone get close and use her against me. I can't— His voice cracked. I can't do that again. I can't watch someone else I care about die because of choices I made. Elena's eyes burned. Then don't make the choice that gets me killed. Make the choice that keeps me alive. Stay. Help me figure out how to survive whatever comes next. Because I'm terrified, Damien. I'm 26, pregnant, alone, and I have no idea how to be a mother. But I know I don't want to do it completely by myself. You're asking me to be a father to a child that's not even mine. I'm asking you to be in my life, however that looks. Whatever you can handle. Elena squeezed his hand. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm just asking for real. Damien stared at her, and Elena watched the war happening behind his eyes. Fear versus hope. Control versus chaos. The man he'd built himself to be versus the man he might actually want to become. I don't know if I can do this, he said finally. Neither do I. But maybe we figure it out together. The silence stretched. Then Damien nodded once, a small movement that felt like a surrender. Okay, he said. We try. Dr. Morrison appeared in the doorway. Time's up. Both of you need rest. Elena didn't want to leave, didn't want to break whatever fragile thing had just formed between them, but Damien was already settling back into the pillows, exhaustion pulling him under, and she knew the doctor was right. "I'll come back tomorrow," Elena said. "I'll be here?" Damien's eyes were already closing. "Not going anywhere." Marcus wheeled her back to her room, helped her into bed, and didn't comment on the tears streaming down her face. He just pulled the blanket up, turned off the light, and took his position in the chair by the door. "Get some sleep, kid," he said quietly. "Tomorrow's going to be complicated." But Elena was already drifting, the medication and exhaustion finally pulling her under. She slept deeply, dreamlessly, and woke the next morning to sunlight and the steady beep of monitors. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. Elena pressed her hand to the movement, feeling something shift inside her chest. Not quite hope. She wasn't ready for that yet. But something close. Something that felt like possibility. The next 3 days passed in a blur of doctors and tests and slow, careful healing. Elena's blood pressure stabilized. The baby stayed put. No more contractions, just steady growth and restless movement. Dr. Morrison finally cleared her to leave the bed, first to walk the hallways with a nurse, then to visit Damien in the ICU. His recovery was slower, complicated by infection in the shoulder wound that required another surgery and stronger antibiotics. But he was improving, getting stronger, spending more time awake. They talked when Elena visited, short conversations that never went too deep but felt important anyway. About nothing and everything. The baby. What came next. How they'd both gotten here. Sienna called once, using a burner phone from whatever safe house they'd stashed her in. She sounded small, broken, nothing like the cousin Elena remembered. "I'm sorry," Sienna had said. "For everything. For being stupid. For dragging you into this." "I know," Elena had replied. "But sorry doesn't fix it. You have to actually do better." "I will, I promise. I'm going to get my life together, go to therapy, actually deal with my shit instead of running from it." "Good. Because I can't save you, Sienna. I can't be the person who fixes your mistakes. I have to focus on my own life now, on my baby." "I understand." A pause. "Will I get to meet him or her when they're born?" "Maybe, if you earn it." Elena had said it gently but firmly. "But that's a long way off. Focus on yourself first." They'd hung up after that, and Elena had felt something release in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acceptance. Sienna was going to make her own choices, her own mistakes. Elena couldn't control that. All she could control was her own life, her own decisions. And right now, she was choosing to try. On the 5th day, Dr. Morrison cleared Elena for discharge. "You're stable enough to leave, but you'll need to come back weekly for checkups. And I mean it, Elena. No stress, no drama, just rest, nutrition, and taking care of yourself and that baby. Got it?" "Got it." Elena signed the discharge papers, her hand shaking slightly. Marcus was waiting in the hallway with a car. Not the SUV from before, but something smaller, less conspicuous. He helped her into the passenger seat and they drove through the city in comfortable silence. "Where are we going?" Elena asked. "Damien's orders. He bought a place for you. Small house, quiet neighborhood, everything you need." Marcus navigated a turn. "Security system, medical alert, and I'll be checking in daily until you tell me to stop." He didn't have to do that. Yeah, he did. It's how he shows he cares. By throwing money and resources at problems until they're solved. Marcus glanced at her. He's not good with words, never has been. But his actions speak pretty loud if you're paying attention. They pulled up to a house that made Elena's throat tight. It was small but perfect. Single story, fenced yard, painted a soft blue that somehow felt hopeful. Marcus unlocked the door and Elena walked inside to find it fully furnished, fully stocked, ready to be lived in. He had people working on it all week, Marcus explained. Wanted it ready for when you got out. Elena walked through the rooms, touching furniture, opening cabinets, trying to process that this was real. That she wasn't going back to a moldy apartment or a penthouse cage. That this was hers. The nursery stopped her cold. Someone had painted the walls a gentle yellow, installed a crib, stocked shelves with baby supplies. It wasn't fancy or expensive looking. It was just ready, waiting. "He did all this?" Elena asked. "He made it happen. Same difference." Marcus set down the bags he'd carried in. There's a phone in the kitchen. My number's programmed, so is Damien's doctor, the hospital, and emergency services. You need anything, you call. When is Damien getting out? Tomorrow, probably. They're releasing him to home care. Marcus hesitated. He's going to need time to recover. Physical therapy, wound care, all that. He won't be much help for a while. I don't need help. I need... Elena stopped, trying to find the words. I need to know we're going to be okay. That this wasn't all some fever dream, and tomorrow I wake up back in reality. This is reality. Messy, complicated, not at all what you imagined, but it's real. Marcus moved toward the door. I'll check on you tomorrow. Lock up behind me. He left, and Elena was alone in her new house, staring at the nursery that shouldn't exist, trying to believe that her life had actually changed. The baby kicked. Elena pressed her hand to the movement and whispered, Okay, we can do this. We can figure it out. Damien came home the next afternoon. Elena watched from her porch as Marcus helped him out of the car, his movements stiff and painful. He looked thinner, more fragile than she'd ever seen him, the bandages visible under his shirt. You should be resting, Elena called. So should you. He made his way up the walk slowly. Nice house. You bought it. I provided funding. You're the one who has to live in it. He reached the porch, breathing hard from the effort. Can I come in? It's your house. No, it's yours. I'm just visiting. They went inside. Damien sat heavily on the couch while Elena made tea neither of them really wanted. It gave her hands something to do, a purpose beyond standing there feeling awkward. Dr. Morrison said you're doing well, Damien said. No more contractions. None. The baby's still cooking. 23 weeks now. Elena brought the tea over. How's your shoulder? Hurts like hell, but I'll live. He took the mug, not drinking. I wanted to talk about what happens next. Okay. I meant what I said at the hospital. About trying. About being present, I guess. But I need you to understand something. He set down the tea, looking at her directly. I don't know how to be the person you probably need. I don't know how to do domestic or normal or any of that. I'm going to screw this up a lot. Probably. Elena sat across from him. But I'm going to screw it up too. I've never been a mother. I've never had anyone actually stick around when things got hard. So we're both going into this blind. That's not exactly reassuring. It's honest. Elena folded her hands over her belly. Here's what I think. I think you're terrified of caring about people because the last person you cared about died, and you've spent 10 years making sure that never happens again. I think you see me and this baby as a second chance to do it right, but you're also convinced you're going to fail. And I think that fear is going to make you want to run every time things get difficult. Damien's expression was carefully blank. Sounds like you've got me all figured out. No, but I'm learning. Elena leaned forward. So here's my offer. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be dad of the year or whatever fantasy you're afraid you can't live up to. You just have to show up, be honest, try. And when you screw up, because you will, you own it and do better next time. That's all I'm asking. And if I can't, if it's too much, then we figure it out. But you don't get to make that decision before you even try. Elena's voice softened. You saved my life, Damien, more than once. Now let me save yours by giving you a reason to be more than what you've built yourself into. Let us be your second chance. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, just once, and Elena saw the fear in his eyes ease slightly. They talked for another hour, making plans that felt both impossible and necessary. Damien would come by regularly, help with whatever needed doing, learn how to be part of someone's life instead of just controlling it from a distance. Elena would focus on the pregnancy, preparing for motherhood, building something stable. They'd both go to therapy, separately and eventually together, because neither of them was equipped to handle this without professional help. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was just two broken people deciding to try being less broken together. When Damien finally left, exhausted from the effort of sitting up for so long, Elena watched him go and felt something settle in her chest. Not love. She wasn't ready to call it that, but something real, something worth protecting. The weeks that followed were harder than Elena had imagined. The baby grew, her belly expanding until she couldn't see her feet anymore. Her back ached constantly. She couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a stretch, and the fear, the constant gnawing fear that something would go wrong, that she'd lose this baby after fighting so hard to keep it, never fully went away. But there were good moments too. Damien came by 3 times a week, at first just sitting and talking, then gradually doing more. He fixed things around the house that Elena hadn't even realized were broken. He came to doctor's appointments, sitting in the waiting room looking uncomfortable but present. He assembled baby furniture, swearing under his breath when the instructions didn't make sense, but refusing to give up until it was done. They fought sometimes, about stupid things mostly, about how involved he should be, about whether Elena was taking on too much, about his tendency to solve problems by throwing money at them instead of actually dealing with emotions. But they also laughed about the ridiculous baby names Elena suggested just to watch Damien's face. About the time Marcus brought a onesie that said, "My daddy's a gangster," and Damien nearly had an aneurysm. About how neither of them had any idea what they were doing and were definitely going to break this kid somehow. Dr. Shaw visited weekly, monitoring the pregnancy, making sure Elena stayed healthy. She never asked about Damien, but Elena could see the approval in her eyes when he showed up for appointments, asking questions that proved he'd been researching obstetrics in his spare time. 30 weeks came and went. The baby's room was finished, painted, and furnished, and waiting. Elena had more baby clothes than any one infant could possibly wear, mostly because Damien kept buying things and leaving them on her porch without comment. She'd started taking prenatal classes, learning about labor and delivery and all the terrifying things that could happen. Damien came to one class, sat through a video about childbirth that made him visibly uncomfortable, and afterward admitted he had no idea women went through that much pain. "Kind of makes drug trafficking seem easy," he'd said, and Elena had laughed so hard she'd nearly peed herself. At 35 weeks, Elena woke to find Damien asleep on her couch. He'd been coming by more frequently as her due date approached, clearly anxious about leaving her alone. She hadn't asked him to stay over, but she also hadn't told him to leave when he'd dozed off during a movie. She stood in the doorway, watching him sleep, and felt something shift inside her. Not love. She still wasn't ready for that word, but something close, something that felt like trust. "You're staring," Damien said without opening his eyes. "You're snoring." "I don't snore." "You absolutely do." Elena moved to sit in the chair across from him. "Why are you here, Damien?" He opened his eyes, looking at her in the early morning light. "Because I don't want you to be alone when you go into labor. I'm not due for another month. Babies don't care about due dates." He sat up slowly, still favoring his shoulder. "And I made a promise to show up, to try. This is me trying." Elena's throat tightened. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Wait until I inevitably screw this up." "You keep saying that, but so far you've done everything right. Give it time." But there was something almost like a smile on his face. The days ticked by. 36 weeks. 37. Elena was huge and uncomfortable and ready for this to be over. Her back hurt constantly. She couldn't get comfortable no matter how many pillows she used. And the baby had apparently decided her bladder was a trampoline. Damien handled it all with surprising patience. He rubbed her back when it ached. He made food runs at 2 in the morning when Elena had weird cravings. He researched pain management techniques and breathing exercises like he was preparing for battle. "You know you're not the one giving birth, right?" Elena had asked after finding him watching yet another YouTube video about labor. "I know, but you are, and I need to know how to help." At 38 weeks, Elena went into labor. It started slowly, mild contractions she almost didn't recognize, a dull ache in her lower back. She was in the kitchen making lunch when the first real contraction hit, strong enough to make her grab the counter. "Damien," she called. He appeared immediately, phone already in hand. "How far apart?" "I don't know." That was the first bad one. "Okay, we timed them. Dr. Morrison said to head to the hospital when they're 5 minutes apart." They timed. The contractions came irregularly at first, 10 minutes, 8, 12. Elena tried to stay calm, breathing through each one like she'd learned in class. Damien paced, clearly fighting the urge to rush her to the hospital immediately. By evening, the contractions were 5 minutes apart and lasting over a minute each. Damien grabbed the hospital bag they'd packed weeks ago, helped Elena to the car, and drove through city traffic with a focus that would have been funny if Elena hadn't been in so much pain. The hospital admission was a blur. Nurses and paperwork and monitors. Dr. Morrison appeared calm and professional, checking Elena's progress and declaring her in active labor. "You're at 6 centimeters," she said. "This baby's coming tonight." The next hours were the hardest of Elena's life. The pain was worse than anything she'd imagined, waves of it that left her gasping and shaking. She'd opted for an epidural, but it only dulled the pain, didn't erase it. She was hot, then freezing, exhausted but unable to rest. The baby's heart rate kept dropping, sending nurses into controlled panic and Elena into full-blown terror. Through it all, Damien was there, holding her hand when she needed to squeeze something, wiping her face with cool cloths, breathing with her through contractions. When Elena screamed that she couldn't do this, that it was too much, that she wanted to give up, he was the one who looked her in the eye and said, "Yes, you can. You're the strongest person I know. You can do this." At 2 a.m, Dr. Morrison told Elena it was time to push. "I can't," Elena sobbed. "I'm too tired." "You can," Damien said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "Just a little longer, then you get to meet your baby." Elena pushed and pushed and pushed until she thought she might actually die from the effort. The room was full of people, nurses, the doctor, Damien standing by her head, refusing to leave even when things got messy and medical. And then, after what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, a cry split the air. "It's a girl," Dr. Morrison announced, holding up a tiny, red-faced, screaming infant. "You did it, Elena." They put the baby on Elena's chest, and the world stopped. She was so small, so impossibly fragile, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that tried to focus on Elena's face. Her cries quieted when Elena touched her, like she recognized her mother's voice. "Hi," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby. I'm your mom." The baby made a small sound, her tiny hand wrapping around Elena's finger with surprising strength. Elena looked up at Damien, who was staring at the baby with an expression she'd never seen on his face before. Wonder, fear, something that looked almost like love. "You want to hold her?" Elena asked. I might drop her." "You won't. Come here." He moved closer, and Elena carefully transferred the baby to his arms. Damien held her like she was made of glass, his hands huge compared to her tiny body. The baby stared up at him, and something passed between them that Elena couldn't name. "What are you going to call her?" Damien asked quietly. Elena had been thinking about this for weeks. "Claire, after your sister." Damien's breath caught. He looked at Elena and she saw his eyes were wet. "You don't have to do that. I want to. She deserves to be remembered, and maybe this is a way to give her back some of what was taken." Damien nodded, unable to speak. He looked back down at the baby, at Claire, and Elena saw something crack in that carefully controlled exterior. He was letting himself feel it. The fear, the hope, the overwhelming responsibility of caring about someone this much. "Hello, Claire," he whispered. I guess I'm going to try to be in your life, if that's okay." The baby yawned, utterly unconcerned with the complexity of adult emotions. Elena watched them, this man who'd saved her life, and this baby who'd saved them both, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Not happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending, but something real, something worth fighting for. The months that followed were chaos. Sleepless nights, and endless diapers, and a learning curve so steep it felt like free-falling. But they figured it out, piece by piece. Damien moved in, first just staying over to help with night feedings, then gradually bringing more of his things until one day Elena realized he'd just stayed. They didn't talk about what they were. Labels felt too complicated, too constraining. They were just them. Two people trying to raise a baby and not completely screw her up in the process. Marcus came by regularly, bringing ridiculous gifts and teaching Claire words that would definitely get her in trouble in preschool. Dr. Shaw continued her weekly visits, monitoring both Elena and the baby, offering advice that probably saved them from multiple disasters. Sienna called on Claire's first birthday. She was sober now, working a steady job in some small town on the coast. She asked if she could visit, meet her niece. Elena said maybe someday, when she was ready, Because forgiveness was complicated, trust was earned slowly, and Elena was still learning to set boundaries, to protect herself and her daughter from people who might hurt them, even unintentionally. On Claire's second birthday, Damien asked Elena to marry him, not with a ring or a grand gesture, but with a simple question asked while washing dishes after the party. "I think we should make this official," he said. "For Claire, for taxes, for whatever reasons people get married." "That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard," Elena replied. "I know, but I'm not good at romantic. I'm good at practical." He dried his hands, turning to face her. "I love you. I love Claire. I want us to be a family. An actual, legal, complicated family. What do you think?" Elena looked at him, this man who still had nightmares about his sister, who struggled with showing emotion, who was trying every day to be better than he thought he could be. This man who'd saved her when he didn't have to, and stayed when it would have been easier to leave. "I think you forgot to actually ask me the question," she said. Damien dropped to one knee, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Elena Hart, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, pulling him up. "Yes, you idiot. Of course I will." They got married in the backyard, with Claire as the flower girl and Marcus as the best man and Dr. Morrison in attendance because she'd become family somewhere along the way. It was small and simple, and nothing like the wedding Elena had imagined as a girl. It was perfect. Looking back, Elena understood that salvation rarely looked the way you expected. She thought she needed rescue, someone to save her from poverty and fear and the crushing weight of doing everything alone. But what she'd actually needed was partnership. Someone who saw her strength even when she couldn't, someone willing to fight alongside her instead of fighting for her. Damien wasn't perfect. Neither was Elena. They still fought about money and control and his tendency to solve problems by disappearing into work. She still struggled with trust, with believing that this was real and wouldn't disappear the moment she let her guard down. But they were trying. Every day, they showed up and tried. And Claire, beautiful, stubborn, fearless Claire, grew up knowing she was loved by two people who'd fought like hell to build something worth having. She grew up understanding that family wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, making mistakes, and choosing to try again. Sometimes Elena thought about that night in the rain, bleeding on a street corner with nowhere to go. She thought about the black car that had pulled up beside her and the impossible choice she'd made to get in. She thought she was getting into a stranger's car out of desperation. She'd actually been stepping into the beginning of her real life. And that, Elena had learned, was how salvation actually worked. Not as a rescue from some benevolent hero, but as a choice you made every single day. The choice to keep trying, to keep fighting, to keep believing that maybe, just maybe, you deserve something better. She'd made that choice in the rain. She made it again every morning when Claire's laughter filled the house. She made it every time Damien looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. And she'd keep making it for as long as she had breath in her body. Because that was what survival looked like when you stopped just enduring and started actually living.